It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah, we're not afraid. No fear here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. And as always, every other week, we got Professor James Corbett. Professor James Corbett. And why is he a professor? He's a teacher, an educator. He professes the truth. I'll call him professor. You know, tell you, James, I just want to share this with you. I was on Richard Grove's show, and he's like, hey, how do you get to be professor? What do you do to get a professor? I want to be like, well, you can be a professor. I think Richard Grove gets to be a professor. You can profess, you know. Somebody does this professor thing, and they're not even hold a candle to James Corbett. There's just bring it. I want that debate. We should bring it on. What you digging the professor nomenclature for you there, James? Come on.
I'll take it if you're going to give it to me.
I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah,
hell
why
yeah.
not?
There's a lot of great professors out there, professors of the truth. You know, how about that? There's, I want to start us off this way. We left Sunday, go watch, Sunday football, with the Steelers, Donna's big thing, and my youngest daughter, her whole family, extended, it's all Packers. So Packers, Steelers, got to go, and they wear their T-shirts, and, hilarity ensues, and you get good burgers. We just got back. My daughter, was her birthday, and she went to Sedona with her husband, and we watched our two little grandsons, 6 and 10. It was great. We got to spend a lot of time with them. We got to live the normie life, in like big giant houses, and they watch TV. Everybody's got blankets on because they keep it at 72, 73 degrees, even in the summer. They're wearing blankets. Watch, man, you guys are killing me, This is it. But what happened is it's been a while since I felt normal. I'm John Q. Normie, sitting watching football, drinking, soda and eating hamburgers. And to see the world, we still edit, publish, Dreams Phoenix, do the show, occupying the land, all this stuff, paying attention to the news and everything. And you look around me, and I know my kids know what's going on and so on, but I feel that there's going to be some roadkill. There's going to be, now they're probably set better than most. They got their precious metals, and they're and they just work and doing well, and things are going fine, and they're not worried about groceries going up another 10%. They're going to make it. But I got the feeling that America is going to get blindsided. And there's a bunch of little news things that have come to my attention, and things that's going on, and Trump's trip to Asia. We'll be talking on the Trump Report tomorrow with Frank about that and so on. But I really need some James Corbett perspective here. I've been seeing, you've been on a lot of shows here lately. James is making rounds. And I'm that feeling of, it's going to come from a perpendicular, unexpected, but relevant direction. And I don't see America prepared. They don't understand. We can talk about it and detail it and give them all kinds of examples, a couple I want to give today. But what's your thought on that? Is the world going to get slapped upside the head, and then what? What do you think, James?
The world is already being slapped upside the head. It's just a question of who's in a position to take it and what kind of position that is. But I would say the story that interests me along those lines for Americans seems to be the SNAP payments that are apparently not going to be made on November 1st. Yeah. So I wanted to get your perspective as an American. How important do you think that is? I know it's always a food thing, as you always point out, and it seems like if there's going to be a food thing, it's going to be starting relatively quickly here.
Well, the rhetoric is that, oh, white man's going to pay for that one. You know, we need and usually it's some big, heavy, unhealthy black woman on TikTok saying, well, you know, as if their opinion means something. But it's going to mean something because they're trying to use this as justification for shoplifting, for stealing, for we're just going to take. Will they do that? Probably. You know, in selected area, they're going to hide. Absolutely. They're going to need that for CNN, MSNBC rhetoric campaign of look what happened. And if they didn't do it, we paid them to do it. I mean, you know, they're starting to find out that, you know, these Antifa riots and whatever the hell they're calling them, they got their own little headquarters. They're being funded by whatever. It traces back to the same old. It's going to happen. What's going to happen is how we're going to perceive it. This is the same thing that's going on in Ireland and London. And, you know, finally, the government's not there to protect your individual rights or your property or your safety, security. They're saying, yeah, just go along with the theft and, you know, kind of, you know, hope for the best and, you know, don't worry about it. Diversity is good. And so, I mean, it's the inmates are running the asylum. And I think people are seeing that. We're reaching out to some regular contacts that we have in Ireland. In London, I'm going to be doing some shows. We did Ian Davis last week. I wanted to talk about, you know, the digital ID and the uptake on that and so on. What's happening is they're starting to abandon this 15-minute city thing because people have taken down all the cameras, thousands of them. They're not operational. They're not going to work. Of course, they'll want to arrest those guys, but, you know, it's this is what it's going to be. It's what you and I have been talking about. You know, nuclear war, comply no more. I mean, you know, there's going to be, you know, war. We don't comply. Now what? You know, what are you going to do about it? What are they going to do about it, James? There's going to be something. The push back is coming. How do you think that's going to manifest itself?
Well, you know, as always, I'm sure there's a contingency plan for anything that does or does not eventuate. But I would say you're exactly right to put the emphasis on the way that this is perceived, the way it's framed, the way it will be reported, and thus the way people will respond to it comes as a result of that. You and I know this. I'm assuming most people out there know it, but we don't consciously think about it every day. It's not even the news itself. It's not even just the facts of the matter. It's the way those facts are contextualized and framed and reported. So that, yeah, of course, if they make it into a thing where, you know, people are, look how absolutely helpless people are without the government. Well, won't someone come in and save us from this? And it will be an excuse, obviously, for, as you say, rioting, looting, pillaging, whatever. It only descends from here. I'll give you the Japanese perspective on this, not about what's going on in America, but what's happening here in Japan. I would say Japanese society has been feeling the pinch of economic belt tightening for a number of years now. And it's starting to reflect in the fact that back a decade ago, the whole point of Abenomics and what they were trying to do was trying to get inflation going in Japan again, because it has been stagnant since the bubble popped in the 90s. Well, guess what? Inflation's back, but it's, you know, not the good kind of inflation. It's the food inflation and other, you know, basic staples that people are already starting to struggle with. Japan, I would say, has more of a flat-ish economy than in the U.S. There are certainly wealthy and there are certainly poor, but there's a lot more people that were in some sort of comfortable in-between space that has been getting less and less and less comfortable over the years. And it's starting to, I think, really affect a lot of people's bottom lines as I say, food prices keep rising and rising, and it eats into more and more people's budgets. So we're starting to see, I think, some of the same political ramifications of that we are in other places around the world. Nationalism, populism is on the rise here in Japan, just like it is everywhere in the world. And now we have our first female prime minister who models herself after Margaret Thatcher and basically wants to continue on with Abenomics. So we will see how that eventuates. But I would say this is a global thing. It's happening, I think, all around the world right now.
How cultural is that, having a woman prime minister in Japan? That kind of surprised me.
Yeah, it is a big deal here. As you know, whatever equality or inequality in the workplace may or may not be elsewhere around the world, certainly women have definitely not been represented well at the tops of corporations here. We'll put it that way. And there is still a much more rigid cultural expectancy around women in the workplace, and they're going to have children, so you don't want to promote them. They're going to be mothers and leave their jobs. So that is still, I think, the default norm, at least for the people who are at the tops of corporations and things these days. So to see a female prime minister, it is certainly a thing here. It means something. But having said that, I wouldn't put too much stock in any of this yet. As you know, I assume by now, Japanese prime ministers, it's a game of musical chairs, and it generally, I'll be interested if she lasts more than 6 months. At that point, we can actually start taking a look at what she may or may not be
What was
doing.
her popularity? Her rhetoric is what? She's going to what? Here she is to save the day, which is what?
So her rhetoric and her popularity is from that, as I say, the rising populist right-wing nationalism trend that is taking place all around the world and taking place here. And if you really want to get into the weeds of it, as people may or may not know, Japan has basically been run as a one-party democracy for the last 60, 70 years. There are other parties, but there is always one dominant party here called the LDP that has basically been in power for almost the entirety of the post-World War II period. So it's really a question of, and this is sort of a center-right conservative-ish party. And so it's always just a question of which faction within that party is going to be leading. And she comes from sort of the Abe faction of the party, which people might remember the Abe period and what he was about and Abenomics and all of that. But at any rate, she wants to kind of continue in that tradition. And her main competition was the son of a previous prime minister called Koizumi, who was quite popular. But because she was more on that right-wing populist nationalist side and perpetuated, for example, one of the things that she mentioned, which was a big deal here for foreigners, probably not so much for Japanese population, but she talked about all these foreign tourists who are coming and disrupting things and kicking deer in Nara and places like that. So she's definitely speaking to that side of it, and there is a sort of rising feeling here in Japan that them foreigners are coming for our gerbs, and we gotta protect our jobs, kind of thing. That is starting to be a rising sentiment here at the exact same time as the population is shrinking. It is now actually a shrinking population and definitely an aging population. So the demographic crisis here, I think Japan is on the front edge of whatever demographic wave is about to sweep over almost the entirety of the world.
I saw that there was a lessening of the rhetoric against immigration. And I'm going, is that part of her? Is there a shift there? Is that realization?
Yeah, so you're right. So there has been an attempt over the past several years to make some more lax laws to get more people, healthcare workers and other sort of, vital workers into the country, also factory workers and what have you, usually from lower developed Southeast Asian nations. They kind of bring them in as foreign grunt workers
from the Philippines or from,
exactly. So there has been in the LDP, there has been sort of an attempt to sort of shift in that direction. She is the reaction to that. I think the idea is that she's going to be slamming the door shut a little bit more.
Is there an effort for raising the birth rate? I remember a decade or more ago, there was a big stories that they have in the U.S. about Americans going over to teach young men how to date, they have like little meetups of this is how you do it. You put down the anaporn, and you go up to a real woman and you say, hey, coffee or suki, something. I'm wondering if there is a recovery for the birth rate. Is there a state-sponsored subsidize, go make babies? I mean, is that a thing?
I mean, this has been a thing for years now. There has been various, and usually at the prefectural level rather than the national level, but that too, different ideas. Oh, we're going to increase, childcare benefits and blah, blah, blah. But come on, we're anarchists, we're realists, we know how the world really operates. The state is not going to do anything positive. It's not going to have any effect, really. And to get the best sense of that, I read a book recently called After the Spike, which is about this demographic trend that's taking place literally all around the world, except certain places in Africa, but they will head in that direction over time. But I'm talking about this demographic spike of essentially a declining population from here on out. There's still going to be we're still cresting a bit on the population rise, but we are definitely starting to see, obviously, the plummeting birth rates. And in that book, they make the very persuasive and scientifically argued argument that there's really no government policy that's going to make any dent on this whatsoever. There are deeper sort of structural civilizational issues involved in this, and there is really no government program in history that has ever had a sustained effect on increasing the birth rate. There have been certain micro blips in certain places where the government has almost not forced, but definitely coerced populations into trying to have more children and stuff. But that only lasts for a few years, and then those populations inevitably join the same downward trend. And we're seeing that literally all over the world. So there's a much deeper issue here than anything that any government's going to step in and solve.
It makes you think that, the effort to get people urbanized, to put them in the cities, to get them off the land, to get them out of the overfly country, or what is really, to control what's left. Mm. You have about, in America, I think it's about half. I mean, I was surprised it was that much, but it's, rural versus urban. I mean, and I'm just, I don't see how this doesn't turn into, if not a hot civil war, a separation, you
know what? You just raised an incredibly important point there, because I don't think a lot of people talk about the demographic issues in terms of that. But I think you're right. I mean, there is something about the urbanization of humanity that leads to a demographic crunch like the one that we're seeing. Out in the countryside on your, acre of property or whatever, you have 7 children and they're all helping out with the farm work and keeping up the ranch or whatever, right? But in the city, you got a little box apartment. You're lucky to even know your neighbor. And if you have space for 1 or 2 kids, you're lucky. And that is increasingly the lot of humanity. And I remember it was just a few years ago. I remember seeing the headline, the global population, globally all around the world, is now over half urbanized as opposed to rural. And that trend absolutely must be playing into the demographic crunch overall.
It seems like a policy, though. And I'm trying to think of what you think the reasoning would be. We just control.
Oh, I think you already hit on one part of it. I mean, urban populations are easier to control in every sense, and also more helpless and dependent on SNAP and what have you. Rural populations tend to be more independent and tend to be more resilient and tend to have the space and the ability to, worst comes to worst, grow their own food and trade and help their neighbors and what have you. Urban populations, despite, or maybe I guess because of the population density, are more disconnected from the people around them. And that is, I mean, we know this. This is one of the factors that Putnam was talking about in Bowling Alone, right? The fracturing of society, and it has something to do with the urbanization of society and people living in these little boxes in apartment buildings where no one knows each other's names.
One of the other things that I read an article, they were talking about the feminization of politics leads to an empire's collapse. And the reasoning they were given is, a lot of, subjective, speculation on whatever, but it was the feminization of politics leads to more wars. It's more trying to be seen as more masculine, or their sentiments towards we take from people to redistribute, the forced redistribution kind of mindset, and all this socialized collectivist kind of thing, which women I think are more predisposed to maybe, but that was something that and we hear about this, from Plato, Aristotle, over the years, is that first to go, that next generation sucks, and they're a bunch of women, and none of them are Spartans, and I could see, women in my experience over life, and certainly going through high school, college, and so on. They like the bad guy, no matter how much they go on, how beta male they want you to get a pedicure, they still like the bad guy. But I'm just, it seems like it's intentional. There's something else going on. And it was, I saw a meme, we had it posted here just in the last week or so, and it was something like, if you wanted to take down a country, you would do this, 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 and this. And a lot of it was from Yuri, what's-his-face, the KGB guy in the early 80s that came here and was articulating the Marxist revolution kind of stuff, doing the video he did with G. Edward Griffin and some other presentations he had done. And we reposted those because he defined exactly what's happening. You go after the core. You go after the real threat to the state, which is the family. And it's usually headed by, it's a patriarchy. It's, he's responsible for providing a nice nest. He's responsible for protection of the family. He's the one that goes out and does battle against the dragon. I mean, that kind of thing was the expectation of the stronger the species, was to provide protection in the nest for making babies. And you could look at this over time and generation. I mean, I'm 64. I've seen, that's why they call it revolution, and I've seen this happen. And it seems so effective, and you wonder what the solution is. Because, like you say, I think it's going to be a food thing. That's just how it manifests itself. That's just when you see it's too expensive to get, or it's not there to get, or they stole it, so you can't get it. This is the food stamp program. When you look at it in the 90s, it was libertarian. We examined this, and it was amazing what you could buy. It wasn't like staples to keep you fed and, chicken in every pot kind of thing. It's Coca-Cola and candy and Dunkin' Donuts and whatever. We accept EBT at freaking Jack in the Box and, whatever. It used to be you had to go to at least a cold sandwich deli. It couldn't be processed or something. Now it's just then they put it on, a card. It wasn't even the stamps that you had to do. Now it's Visa. And it's just, then they made it easy to do that. So all the illegal aliens get health care and food stamps and a hotel. I just, that is, I think this food stamp thing, they cut that off. Do you think the Republicans are looking forward to doing that, to see what happens, to negotiate something? We had RFK Jr. came out. I think they changed it to where you can't buy sugar drinks and some other stuff. They were threatening that. I don't know if that took effect or not. But, it seems like a tactic, and the Schumer shutdown, the Democrats want, we're going to do it until they have the No Kings protest. We'll see what's then. Well, that was a nothing burger. So then they go, when they can't get food, then they're really going to be in the streets, Well, identify them better, I guess. I don't know how this is going to play out. Do you have an inclination?
Yes, I do. Okay, not on the specific Republican, Democrat, political horse wrangling stuff. I couldn't care less. But on the civilizational issues that you're bringing up here, I think there are important points to be made. And whether it's the feminization of politics or whatever you want to call it, the idea that, certainly in the U.S. context, this nation of independent spirits, the War of Independence and all of this, we've won our liberty, the Jefferson yeoman farmer, that ideal has certainly been trod out of the American population over the past couple centuries, I feel safe in saying. And how do you go about doing that? I mean, that is a massive social engineering process. But of course, it plays on the better instincts of people, or at least the nice instincts. Well, we have to be nice to people and take care of them. There has to be a social safety net. So we should all contribute, and the government will provide these social safety nets. And of course, that is how you start to domesticate the tax cattle. Of course, that's exactly what it is. And the end result of that actually is put in pretty stark terms by a very good article I was just reading today from David Bell over at brownstone.org. He had an article up on universal basic income makes slavery great again. And he talks about everywhere and every time and in every society where some version of universal basic income or something like it has been tried, it always leads people into being essentially domesticated cattle and takes out exactly those instincts, which are the ones that have propelled human civilization in the past, like the ones of providing for your family, which is, of course, the basic thing that all of our forefathers and foremothers were struggling to do for umpteen generations. But if you can get a government that comes along and says, doesn't matter if you work or you don't work, everybody's just getting this amount of money every month. And oh, by the way, it's, of course, going to be an electronic digital money that we control and track, and we can choose what you spend it on and all of that. That is the ultimate form of slavery, because it's slavery that is instituted in a way that the slaves do not understand they are slaves. And that is the logical endpoint of this social safety net system that people have been lulled into. Don't worry, the government will take care of it for you. You don't have to struggle for yourself.
Yeah, I'm showing this article. It's a New York Times article, and you have to subscribe to get to it. And that is not the one I was talking about, but where it's in the New York Times talking about feminization leading the wars and research of, and you got a Oxford academic paper here on. So it's not like just making it up. I mean, it's, becoming a thing, And one of the things I wanted to make sure I got in, I wanted to get your take on this. A couple of things. One, we have our good friend Keith Knight did a show with Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, and I got to watch just like 5 minutes of it, and we're going to have him on talk about it, and I'll watch the rest of it. But the Libertarian Institute joining the revolution with Young Turks against something. I mean, whatever. I can see this is something that Cenk Uygur reached out to, I think it was Keith, and then there was a guy, another progressive influencer from Houston that had me on, and it was at the same time, and I could see what they were doing. They were trying to enlist, libertarian talk show hosts in the cause against something that they felt we overlapped in. And what would that be? Well, there wasn't anything philosophically, it was just, they're bad. Yeah. Well, and you're better because what? I mean, so I'm very interested to see what happens there. So enough on that. The one thing that was really big, we've been covering Basel III and the Bank for International Settlements and their policies and how they're, since this is dated 13, I have one from 10 and so on. But then this came up. This guy his name is, what's his name? Andre Jank or something. And I've been watching some of his videos, and he made me aware of something that I did not know. And I highly recommended this, that people watch this. And what it came down to, see, I think I brought up, yeah, here it is. Basel III makes it official, gold is money again. Now, I'm just going to read this paragraph. We'll discuss it. Some things really are too good to be true. Contrary to recent reports, gold will not be reclassified as high-quality liquid asset. Okay, now what was this? This is May 2025. Well, it just changed, and they did make it. Now, I'm going, all right, what does that mean? A high-quality liquid asset is something that banks can 100% use as collateral or as trading. It's money, it's dollars. Well, it's U.S. Treasuries. That's that's what they keep on their balance sheet. Gold was only able to be used at 50%. And I go, what the crap is that? Because it wasn't set as a tier 1 asset. It was set at something not, And I'm going, wow. So as this starts coming up, the banks and sovereign nations, they're just loading up on gold. And I looked at this and I go, that wasn't the way it was before? No, it wasn't. So now they do the stablecoin thing to where that is how they're going to keep the treasuries to the dollar, and treasuries and gold is the same, and can we have a crypto that's going to be to gold? They keep talking about this because China just did it. China goes, R1 is you can trade it for gold. And they go, we don't trust you. We're in Shanghai, kiss our ass. We ain't doing that. You'll shut it down, whatever. So what they did is they put like 7, 8 banks around the world to where the actual gold is being stored geographically, and you can walk in and trade you want in for gold. So I'm going, and I've always been, I go, as soon as they make gold like money again, or dollar, or it's exchangeable for a currency, or they even pinky swear promise and dry vermouth, little atomizer, over the martini, it's really dry, a little bit of gold, and it's going to be, super, super valuable. That's coming. And when that comes, in light of, and then we have stories that go up by tomorrow. I just sent a story to staff to put up about, it was Trump doing, what was it? It was a gold thing too. But I'm looking at gold making its rise, and when it does that, I don't see the dollar surviving it. And what does that mean? It means no EBT, I can tell you that. So it's coming. We're like here, James.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think this is just one more data point along the trail that has led us to the conclusion that we are in a monetary changeover event, that the monetary paradigm, the global reserve paradigm at any rate, is changing. And I would liken it to, you've heard the phrase, that when the tide goes out, you see who's still wearing their swimming trunks and who's naked, right? Well, the tide has been the last 50, 60, 70 years of Pax Americana, which means global superpower that has been able to essentially paper over the world with its paper promises, aka the dollar, because it has been that crux point of the entire monetary system, the entire global monetary system. That is obviously changing, coming to an end, I would say. And so the tide's going out, and the people with their trunks on are the people with the gold reserves, because at the end of the day, it's going to come back down to something that will be universally recognized as valuable, and that is not going to be paper dollars at some point, right? So that is why we've seen the record stockpiling of gold by country after country. China and everyone else has been stockpiling gold feverishly over the past several years, and there is a reason for that, because I think they understand that this monetary paradigm shift is happening. And we shouldn't be, in one way, this reveals the time-old truth that, just as the same ounce of gold would have bought you a finely tailored whatever, right, a couple thousand years ago, it'll buy you a finely tailored suit today. The gold has retained its value while the paper comes and goes. That is true. And so it, of course, makes sense that, it's not just a good investment in the sense of, I will have more paper dollars tomorrow because of no, it's the way to preserve wealth. And this is another sign of that. Having said that, I don't think we should have any delusions that just because the yuan is gold convertible at the moment means that is the long-term plan for this. No, like every other government that has ever existed or presumably ever will, at the time at which they can start closing that gold window and doing exactly doing what Nixon did back in the 70s, they're going to do it. Because that is the way governments function. That's what the entire banking system is predicated on. Those paper promises that aren't worth the paper they're not printed on anymore, because it's all digital. Another
story coming up. Trump is in Asia, going around meet with everybody. Kim Jong grandson, he's going to talk about building condos or something. But South Korea had just announced Korea to buy gold as nation's way China vault offer. So this is a thing. Right when Trump comes in, he's going to be, hey man, we're gonna be doing this China. They got a vault. I'll put one here. It's all good. So gold is a weapon, and Russia and China have been buying it up, and you see the numbers of what they are reporting, and there's way more than that. And a lot of it that was not counted was, less than like a decade ago, they were encouraging their billion, if there is a billion Chinese, to buy gold. They have, this is India is really big on gold. China is big on gold. India is really big on digital currencies now. There is something major changing. I can feel it.
And there's so many different pieces to this. Just one that I was reading about had to do with, I think it was India buying oil in yuan or what have you. Anyway, there's so many different parts of this that add up to the same thing. And I was reading an article recently, and I wish I could remember what it was because I would cite it if I could, but it was about the stages of empire and the collapse of empires and how this has happened many times. And they were making the point that, America's in the fifth of 7 stages or whatever it is, just at the point where it's completely overextended all around the world and it's starting to not be able to write checks that its butt can't cash anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know what it was. I mean, none of that information was new to me, but just the way that they put it together was quite convincing to me that, yes, I mean, clearly we are starting to see the bankruptcy of the U.S. becoming apparent to all. I mean, it's in some ways arguably been bankrupt for a long time, but as long as everyone believes in the system, it can continue to function. Well, people are starting to withdraw from that system, and we're starting to see what that means. And I think that's, when we look, hundreds of years from now, whatever, historians of the future, when they look at this period and everything that's happening, who's going to care about, Trump and what the Speaker of the House said on this or that day? No, the point is the sort of civilizational thing that is happening right now. And what we're seeing is an empire that is clearly starting to see the precipice that it's almost rolling over and is now trying to fight back against that and doing everything it can and using all of its political capital that it may have left in order to, make a better deal, because suddenly, hey, we got to start watching our finances. We don't have unlimited amount of money to keep doing this. I think we're starting to see that. What is happening right now is desperation on the part of an American empire that's finally starting to realize that it's going down.
They keep kicking the can down the road. This is one of the stories. Now, this was from 2010. This is 15 years ago. Basel III forces banks to buy toxic sovereign debt. Well, this is, treasuries and whatever, and they're going on about this, Economic Policy Journal that when I did Basel in a search on Freedom's Phoenix, a bunch of stuff came up. I mean, it's 15, 20 years of how they've been using it to get us to buy. It just keeps kicking the can. You got. Now it's stable coins. And I'm going, wow, man, this is a thing. This is a good paragraph. If gold becomes a high-quality liquid asset, countries will not need U.S. dollars to finance their economies anymore. The gold corridor vaults make the metal accessible for countries trading in yuan. China plans to price gold at an average rather than a daily price to make it less volatile. They'll do it over months or a year to date or something like that. China plans to price gold at an average rather than a daily price to make it less volatile. China will help developing nations, I'm going to love them for that need infrastructure by giving them loans based on their resources. China then gets to finance development and build influence, helping developing countries to skirt the West and the IMF and the International Monetary Fund while using gold as a high-quality liquid asset, blah, blah. This is coming. This is, and China, I always said this, I was going, China's all I got to do is just, kind of sprinkle a little bit of gold on their yuan, and we're screwed. All I got to do is say gold and currency together, and then what happens when they start actually using silver in transactions. So I'm really, I don't know if I put too much emphasis on this or not. When I read this and started to understand what was going on and that gold had not been before, and only when a bank holds it, they can only use 50% of its value. Now, I know it was Trump is now this next month, or in 26 or so. Anyway, he's threatening the revaluing the gold in Fort Knox to, I don't know, $4,200, whatever it's going to be now, as opposed to $42 that it's, priced at now. And I don't even know what the hell that's about. And we were talking about, the audit, and we're going to go check, and then we don't hear anything about, there's something else coming. There is something else coming, roadkill. Yeah. We're going to be roadkill.
Well, you remember that brouhaha, it was a few years ago now, where Germany was trying to get their gold from the Fed, and It's
Took
like
them 7 years.
yeah, trying to repatriate it because they realized, oh, it's not all there because they loan fractions of it out to other people and what have you. So the gold is physically there, maybe, but at any rate, it's not all owned by one person. It's multiple claims and trying to get that gold repatriated because if you don't have it, if it's not physically there, you don't own it.
I see something major coming, and I'm wondering this food stamp thing is a tool for something. And I'm not sure what the Democrats are shooting, and it's gotten to the point that I always get to where I don't care, and it doesn't matter. You know, occupy the land, whatever. I mean, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Yeah. But it keeps, pulling me back in to analyze. Go, wow, man, this is going to, it's on, man, the artillery shells aren't glowing over the horizon. I can freaking see the puffs of smoke. I mean, what the hell? So and you making the rounds, talking to other people, are they as concerned? Are they looking for, here it comes? Or are they just, winners and losers in team jersey?
I don't see a lot of people talking about the economic side of this. I see them talking about the cultural manifestations of this that will probably result in some level of ginned up or what have you, civil war of some sort. But that's to me, that's the theatrics, that's the fireworks, that's the way it's going to manifest, that's what people are going to be thinking about. But ultimately, yes, this does come down to the economics of it and the financial side of it, the monetary side of it. And I think gold and concentrating on the changeover in monetary paradigm might be a more effective way to analyze what's really happening. Whether or not that's going to actually, motivate or excite or interest anybody.
No.
As opposed to talking about, Antifa and what have you.
And that's one thing that I wanted to, delve into. It doesn't matter. I mean, even people that agree with you, people that understand, people that live it, even people that would make alterations in their investments.
Well, that's the thing. It matters. It matters for what you can do with that knowledge and what you can tell and advise your friends and family and loved ones. Hey, maybe you need a bit of gold in your portfolio, et cetera, et cetera. And you can occupy the land and start growing food. But it's really a personal thing. But then again, in the collapse of society and civilization and an eventuation of actual civil war, then you gotta fend for yourself, and maybe you're armed and maybe you know what you're doing and maybe you have some good security, but still, in the event of the hordes of people spilling out of the urban areas looking for land and food and what have you, good luck.
Yeah, the zombie apocalypse, there'll be beef jerky by the time they get here. But, we just went on our way back. Donna went today, and she put up some raised gardens, and we're starting the food thing. We were kind of going to hold off till spring, and then we were thinking, yeah, maybe not. We'll divert a little bit of our energy over this food thing, get it going, and more tree stuff and fruit tree, that kind of stuff. So she went and bought a bunch of plants. And I go, they're called seeds. No, I don't got time for that. We got to get it going. So, she's on it. And I'm supportive of that. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'll help you a little bit. We'll slow the build a little bit, get the food thing going because it's got to get going. That's one of the things here in Arizona. It's like planting time. I mean, we grow food 24/7. I mean, the only time that we really take off is July and August when everybody else is growing. We're like, whoa, man, this. You got to have a desert shade cloth, to do that. But it's really, it was pleasant for me just to, decompress for a couple of days, go, enjoy our daughter's home. They got, everything and the grandkids, and we were just, enjoying it. We got to spend time with them, football, extended family, and all that. And they're really excited, a lot of the extended family talking about Occupy, what we're doing, and that kind of show some pictures and, send them videos and, kind of see what we're doing. Well, they're going to come out and RV it, for a week and kind of help, some of the guys, and, that'll be fun. But I don't think they really understand the immediacy of this, So all I can do with my family is go, well, you got a place out there. Well, you got a place. You got RVs. You got a place. You got a place. Well, I feel responsible to kind of up the infrastructure on the place, have, a little bit more sleeping quarters, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, because I feel we're in a race, James.
Yeah.
Do you feel an urgency, or is it just kind of continuation of the slide into something, or are we near an end game?
Yeah, good question. Maybe I should be feeling that more than I am, but maybe I'm burnt out because I've been doing this 18 years now and looking at this and thinking about it. And 18 years ago, I definitely felt that urgency back in the War of Terror and, the false flag that's going to spark the war with Iran and all of that. I was definitely down that rabbit hole at that time. So in one way or another, I've been looking at these kind of collapse scenarios for 18 years now, and maybe I'm immune to them at this point. At any rate, I think I have a better understanding of how they can kick the can down the road another few years and another few years. I'll always remember in the wake of the 2008 crisis, the global financial crisis, I remember talking to Bob Anderson, and at that time, I was like, oh, this is it. I mean, there's no way they can possibly kick the can down the road with this. They're talking about, $700 billion bailout and all of this. And no, he was the wise old man who said, oh, I think they'll be able to kick the can down the road. I think they know how to keep this going on. And he was right. I was wrong. So I've been humbled by that. So I am hesitant to say, this is definitely it. But we're definitely entering an accelerationist phase. I mean, there are more things taking place in a week that would have been absolutely mind-blowing a decade or two ago than have happened, in my entire lifetime. So we'll see. We'll see where this goes. I unfortunately, I don't see a way out of this that doesn't go through some sort of crisis, though.
Well, define, give me the elements of a crisis. Not there's no food, or I don't have any money, or, a lot of times we go on war footing and American people rally and your community comes together. Kind of, define crisis.
It's a good question, because what does that mean and how does it manifest? Maybe I am stuck in old modes of thinking, but I continually think back to the World War scenario. I think that is more and more of a likelihood, perhaps even I won't say necessity, but almost so at this point, given the geopolitical relations. And that is, of course, just one manifestation of this civilizational rot / monetary changeover and the kind of civilizational things that are happening. But that's the one that sticks out in my mind as, no one's going to be able to look the other way, or, who cares? It'll be the type of thing that'll impact people in a very important way. Having said that, I can't speak to the American situation in particular, but I certainly look at that from afar, and I see the incredible... I already think it is a civil war. It's just not like a fighting war at this point, but all I see are people who hate the other half of the country, and that generally does not resolve without some sort of actual fight taking place.
I watched an interview that Tucker Carlson did with Cheryl Hines, RFK Jr.'s wife, that is a star in
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. My kids, man, they love that thing. I just not. But it's he was the guy, Larry, what's his name?
Larry
was
David.
The guy that created Seinfeld and so on. It was just much ado about nothing kind of crap, But he was major anti-Trump, man. That was all. And then she's married to RFK Jr., and they didn't really get into the detail that I was looking for. She's trying to be polite, and I love these people, and blah, blah, blah. But it was obvious that she went through some criticism for, being RFK Jr.'s wife and being in the Hollywood and the vaccine thing and so on. How do you deal with that? What do you think that was? She either wasn't capable of, didn't really understand, or just didn't want to share. And she wanted to keep being an actress, I guess, or something. But it's that psychology is what has been weaponized against us. And I remember Arillis, his daughter-in-law, RFK Jr., married his son, Junior, or the third, and she talked about this as being a CIA knock, how it's weaponized. They know they can immerse you in all of these vectors. Well, when, Israel, for lack of a better term, gets control of TikTok, and you have them going after social media to do this, I'm thinking they're fighting the last war. There's something else that's going to trump that. You know, no pun intended, but you know, is going to reset America. You know, the young, because young are rebellious. They're not going to just go into. We did that. We did that, done that. We're done with that. Got T-shirt. Now we're conservative. We're making babies or something. You want to be a rebel? Have 5 kids. I mean, you know, there's something coming because
there's something coming that is
on.
much bigger than anything that we're talking about, any of the politics or the wrangling. And I think a key to that was I was just listening to a Tucker Carlson interview with I can't remember the guy's name, but he was part of the Eco Health Alliance and ended up becoming something of a whistleblower about what was going on there and the lab leak and all of that kind of stuff. But they, at one point in their conversation, started talking about the synthetic life that is now being created. And they're working on how to get, you know, from simple cells to more complicated cells to multicellular organisms, etc. And by synthetic life, this is literally created in a lab completely synthetically, does not exist in nature. They are creating it from the ground up. And he started talking about, you know, well, they're already starting to try to put AI of sort into nanobots that will then be able to create its own synthetic life as needed to do all these crazy things. Like, obviously, you can create viruses that can infect and hurt people, but how about viruses that infect and rust, you know, metal parts and things like this because they can secrete certain types of acids or whatever. The sky's the limit when you start literally creating life that can do all of these crazy things. And when coupled with this, you know, AI, nanobot, whatever, it's just getting so utterly insane that you can point people to the actual scientific articles and what's being worked on and the DARPA projects and all of this, but, you know, not 1 in 100 will even understand it. And the 1 in 100 that do, there will be 1 in 100 who actually believe it. We're getting into total sci-fi stuff in the near future. And that's where I think, you know, even 5-10 years out, it's incredibly difficult to imagine where we're going to be with these types of technologies and what that will make of humanity itself.
Were you ever a sci-fi fan? Did you read sci-fi much at all?
Yeah, I didn't read a lot of sci-fi. I have read some, but I certainly watched a lot and I was interested in it when I was younger,
Every one of these is a movie. You know, they create nano this that does that and doesn't change in the world and kind of goes to crap and the salvation of, and we have to. I mean, it was, you know, tons. They can't come up with anything. I can't remember. Even in the 70s, there was one they call them orgons, I think, organites or orgons. It's synthetic, like it's brain cells that they're taking and interfacing silicon with brain cells. Now they're coming up with, you know, carbon nanotubes that they use to transmit the signals and insulated by blah, 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 blah. Here it comes. And I remember there was a sci-fi, you know, B movie back in the day of where the world had collapsed, but they still had satellites.
Yeah.
And they went into a room, and it was a bunch of monkeys with, you know, drugged out using their brains as the AI to yada, 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 yada. They're not even going to use monkeys, man. They're going to get Daryl, you know. There was a movie about called Daryl, D-A-R-Y-L, you know, digital artificial life form, whatever. They took a baby, took the brain out, put like a positronic brain in it or something, because they saw that the senses of the human body, you know, taste, touch, feel, you know, smell, all this stuff was sensory inputs that could do this large language modeling in the human world. And it programmed, you know, to be so these things is what they're doing. If we can think of it, it's going to happen. Humans are amazing that way.
Well, you know what? It's funny you bring all that up because I just wrote an article about why I talk about agorism because
I saw it.
Larkin had a video a couple weeks ago why I don't talk about agorism. So I thought, okay, well, good opportunity to talk about this and bring it back up. So I was rereading the Agorist primer and looking at Samuel Edward Konkin III and all of that. And I was reminded, you know what? SEK3 probably considered himself a sci-fi fan first and foremost. And he had his own fanzine and was publishing and involved with various sci-fi writers. and is part of that, libertarian tradition in sci-fi and Heinlein and all of those people, right? So there's definitely a strain of that, and you know what? It connects in with what I've been saying for years, and I know you've been saying, the idea that it's narrative that fundamentally drives humanity, and I think maybe we've lost some of the sense of that big libertarian activists and philosophers in the past were highly interested in fostering and encouraging science fiction writers and talent like that, because these are the people who are going to be envisioning the future, and hopefully not the dystopian terrible future, but maybe, hey, Moon is a harsh mistress. Hey, here's how you can actually do an anarchist revolution. There are things like that. I mean, that is so important, especially now, as, we are on the cusp of all this sci-fi craziness. Who is going to be the person who's going to come out and articulate how this can go well? How we can get out of the nightmare dystopian side of it and get into the, the happy side of this.
We are at a point, being interested in science fiction. I read a lot of the classics, and not so classics. But even as a kid, at junior high, it was just interesting to me. And now it seems like it's all coming true. It's happening, but it's got a dystopian twist to it.
Yeah.
It's always, 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 450. I mean, come on,
instruction
man.
manual. You know what I just read recently? I hadn't read it before. I'd seen the movie, but I hadn't read the actual story. I read the Minority Report. Philip K. Dick, of course, that got turned into that Tom Cruise flick in 2002. And the story is, it's interesting. It's different than the movie, but, the basic plot is there. But, the precogs, who are these mutant cognitive, whatevers.
From vaccines or whatever.
Yeah, from whatever, who can predict the future, and they're hooked up to these computers that kind of sort through their babbling nonsense to tell you what's going to happen and all of that. And it ends up the person in charge of this pre-crime unit gets framed or implicated in a future murder, blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting the ways that concept of pre-crime has already been around for 100+ years, but has definitely taken off in recent years. And now there's all this software that purports to be able to produce heat maps of where crime is likely to occur. So your police force can increase your patrols here and reduce crime and blah, blah, blah. They're really pushing on that lever. And that's
probable cause is the AI said you were going to commit a crime.
Exactly right. And of course, there's been a lot of stuff to come out to debunk this and to show that actually, there's absolutely no statistical discernible difference once police departments implement this stuff, and there's nothing to show that it's actually preventing anything and blah, blah, blah. But they're going ahead with it. And now we're getting, Palantir and others creating this big database on every American and everyone else in the world. And it just gets crazier from there. So again, unfortunately, the tyrants use this science fiction as an instruction manual rather than as the warning that it was presumably intended as.
I'm wondering if it was it's even like the Bible. If you read the Bible like a story, just straight through, it goes about the characters of all the villains in it, the kings of this, to that, kill all the babies, do all this, lay waste or whatever, which a lot of the Hebrews were doing that too. But it was a mirror of what's going on now. It demonstrated the sense of humanity and how they want to control. And all these bad guys biblically in science fiction throughout history, man, it rhymes a lot. Yeah. And it seems like, Revelation is just a prediction. You're going to have a number from the UK is going to say you can't buy or sell or work or whatever, and you got to make a decision. So I'm looking at this, and it's all for convenience. And here you got Bill Gates coming out going, well, maybe that climate thing is not as bad as we thought it was, never mind. I mean, it's not that. And then, of course, he wants AI for everything.
Well, yeah, exactly. Now that we need energy for AI, suddenly, hey, guys, whatever, coal, oil, nuclear power plants, it's all good.
I didn't make that connection. That's awesome, James. Okay, that was it. I wonder what the motivation for him was. we need a bunch of electrons. Yeah. Well, screw the environment.
Exactly.
We're going to surveil.
Yep. They need a new narrative now. And of course, so he's trying to tie it into like but we're going to take care of culture, of agriculture and livestock and the planet and all of this. That's what we should be concerned about, not temperature and CO2, which is just a way of putting it in the one health basket that they're working on.
It was the same result. They wanted the climate control so they could control. Yep. Now they want the food control so they can mRNA
exactly.
in
It's
your
about
lettuce
monopolization of resources at the end of the day. And side benefit, now they can build all the power plants they want. So, hey, crisis averted for Gates and his gang. But you're right. You're right about that. Like the Bible and whatever else, historical books from thousands of years ago. Nothing has changed. Humanity has not changed in thousands of years. No. And it was something that just occurred to me the other day. I remember back in the day when people were arguing about COVID and what it was and what it wasn't and blah, blah, blah. And there would be the people who say, well, whatever, sore throat and runny nose and lose your voice and blah, blah, blah. That's a cough. That could be pneumonia. That could be anything. It could be a cold. It could be a flu. They're all the same. But my point has always been, well, yeah, because the human body just goes wrong when it goes wrong in identifiable ways that always manifest the same. It's always a headache and a sore throat and a runny nose and a cough and whatever. It's the same type of thing, no matter what's causing it, because your body goes wrong in certain identifiable ways. I think civilization and humanity itself is the same. When there are people who are themselves wrong in the head or whatever, they go wrong in certain ways that are identifiable and is a pattern that you can see throughout history. That's why tyrants always act the same. They always want the same things. They always desire death and destruction, and the good people of the world need to counter that with creation and life, and that's the eternal struggle. And the only difference between what we're going through now and what people went through thousands of years ago is the technological side of it. Now that the tyrants have technology that they can do to engineer things differently, and that should be concerning to us.
This is something to ask you. I haven't read Machiavelli, The Prince, straight through. I mean, I get it, but I haven't read it. I'm sure you have, okay? So what's different in there that is not coming to pass? I mean, his whole thing was how to maintain control.
Yep.
What in there do we learn from The Prince by Machiavelli?
Excellent question. And yes, I have read it, but I read it at least a decade ago, and I do not remember in that degree of detail. But you're right. It's from the perspective of if he was advising a prince about how to maintain power and how to grow his power and influence, this is what you do. And so, I mean, I guess maybe Machiavelli, maybe he gets a bad rap as if, he's the evil one with all these evil ideas. But no, he's like, well, if you wanted to be a prince who wanted to be in power, this is what you do. And yeah, those types of things are probably still largely applicable today. Obviously, it looks different in a modern liberal democracy, whatever you want to call it, but it's the same type of ruthless elimination of all opposition that you would want to do if you're in that kind of position of power. So I should, and I will go back and reread that and maybe see.
Yeah, because the Prince and Carol Quigley doing Tragedy and Hope, it's almost like they're brother and sister. It's a manifestation. Yeah. That would be interesting, the comparison between those. I mean, of course, I get, little bits out of, Machiavelli stuff and everything, applied quotes and all that. But I haven't read it straight through. I don't even know how large is it?
It's not a big book. I don't know. I can't remember how big, but it's readable.
I might make the effort.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on audiobook in the tractor,
There you go.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Speaking of audiobook, mine will be coming hopefully by Thanksgiving or Cyber Monday, somewhere around there. So.
Read by
James Corbett. Yay.
By James Corbett. The Silky Tones.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'll definitely do that just to do it. I read it, but, it was so... I just came away from a feeling of negative. I mean, it's like, damn. But sometimes people need to know this is what's coming. This is what's here. This is what... A reportage. Let me tell you what's up.
That's interesting to me because I think there is a lot of positivity in there. But I remember you saying that it was the second last or the third last essay is the one on the Letter to the Future, which is pretty dark. So I get why it's kind of, it leaves you with a dark impression.
Well, hopefully we're going to have some positive aspect. There are a lot of positives, but it's not going to manifest itself in some political way.
No.
I don't see that happening.
No.
It's just they're frittered around on the edges. It's all photo op. It's even Trump. I mean, it's just photo op, and positioning of him and his family and they, them, those doing whatever. And then this talk he's always trolling about a third term kind of thing. And they just really want to seriously, he's just having fun with them. But, I mean, there's a mechanism. He could run for VP or something and dance staff, some BS. I don't really think that's in the cards. But I am looking at, before you go, I want to get your opinion on what's going on in New York. When you're having a socialist endorsed by AOC that's going to run against Schumer, are they really making that much ground? Or are they going to take New York City and go, see, we're doing it really bad. Look at how bad we do it. I mean, I don't see it. What do you think is going to happen from that?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so let's look at the larger picture, because as you're saying, I don't think that fundamentally all this political photo op stuff is kind of it's not the point. It's not the core of the point. And so I think, again, unfortunately, my mind keeps going back to this. As someone who's looked at history a bit, I think that the way that these types of tensions that we're living through right now generally manifest and resolve is through warfare. And I don't want to see that take place, especially not on a global level at this point, because, again, I'm acutely aware of how much World War I totally, utterly obliterated people's conception of what war was and how it was waged and whether civilians were implicated in war, which they certainly were in World War I. It got even worse and crazier in World War II. I do not want to see what a World War III would look like, but the idea that you'd be able to just sit it out, even if you are, out there in the middle of nowhere, I think it would be something that you could not notice.
They're not going to let it go to waste. I mean, that's one thing. Crisis, an unstable or dangerous situation of extreme difficulty that requires a major decision or action to resolve. Well, what do they say? Can't let a good crisis go to waste. We got to have a resolve for you. It's the great reset of we're in charge now, and it's just, I don't see, there's always collectivist solutions, like especially this thing going on in New York. We're going to build housing. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you that. We're going to, and I don't see that. I can't come up with anything else other than what we're doing.
I'll just leave with this insight then. I think I got this from David Friedman when he was on. I think I interviewed him once or twice. At any rate, I think he made the point at some point, the social contract that we're always told about. Obviously, is a mythical thing that doesn't exist that we didn't sign. But he made the point that what the social contract is essentially a truce or a peace treaty of some sort, or a ceasefire between two factions that were warring at some point in the past. And they came up with, okay, we'll settle and we'll agree to this. And that's the way that society ossifies for a certain period of time and in a certain way. And that makes sense. I mean, what is the Constitution, or what is this document or that document? It is a sort of peace treaty or ceasefire between warring sides. Okay, we can agree on this. And people, sometimes that functions for a while and people kind of get used to it and it becomes the normal. But there are times when that starts to fracture. And I think we're in that time. The peace treaty, the truce of whatever, times past, hundreds of years past, is coming to an end. And we're starting to see battle lines forming again within polities. So politics is war by other means until it doesn't work, in which case you just do war. And again, I keep coming back to that.
My grandson's 10 years old, and his homework I was helping him with a couple nights ago was on the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going, well, Papa knows a little something about something. Just ask me the question. I already filled it out. And he's got great penmanship. That kid is amazing. But I'm just going, just ask me this question. I know the answer. I go, but you know what that word means. What about that word? So finally it got to where, all right, I got his interest. And I go, that's why my show is called Declare Your Independence. And I showed my signature next to John Hancock's, and I go, say, so they can read it, man. I mean, he's like, whoa, what the hell? So I got him to agree to sit. and me, I didn't read the whole Declaration. I just read the preamble before they gave the reasons. And then the end part, my favorite part, we must therefore acquiesce in the necessity. So each one of the words, I kind of give them the concept, and then I go, yeah, we should watch The Patriot now, you'll get it, you know? And it did impact him a little bit, but that's not what they're going for. They just want you to answer the question on the test of I fill in the blank of what, and you know the teacher doesn't know squat about it. And the pamphlet that they had was like 8 pages of the whole Declaration of Independence, and you know a little bit. Well, they went to Lexington to say nothing about it and what was going. So I put it in war, aspects of how the colonists chased them back and defending the powder and shot from the confiscation, yada yada yada. And it was very interesting. Where my oldest daughter, her kids, they're traveling around the country. They actually go to the North Bridge. Mm-hmm. They're there. The shot heard around the world. They're getting a real, they call it road school. Mm-hmm. And it is just amazing the difference. And I'm just looking at how many young school-age children there are. And I was talking about we're going into this 4th of July coming up is the 250th anniversary. And I remember the bicentennial in 76. I was like, I don't know, 8th grade or something. And every fire hydrant was painted red, white, and blue. I mean, it was a thing all over the country. Back then, probably had a little bit more understanding. But now, as we're going into the 250, especially with Trump there, I don't see it coming. I don't see
Do you think there's going to be a military parade?
Understanding. Yeah, there'll be a military parade. Look at how big the tank gun is. Yeah. So I'm feeling that I would really be interested if you get to The Prince by Machiavelli, and you're familiar with Tragedy and Hope. Yeah. If you have the time, and when you do that, we'll talk about it and the comparison, the report, because I can feel it. There is something, and when they start making, big moves, like gold being a tier 1 high-quality liquid asset, and then China making it, changeable to gold, the yuan, all around the world, that's a threat to the petrodollar. There is no way that they're going to be able to compete with, the stable coin, it's tied to the dollar. Yay! I mean, so there. It's coming, man. And I know, years ago, a decade ago, you might have been like, yeah, this seems kind of, it's a beginning of, I never say that. I'm not the guy going, while evils are sufferable, we'll put up with it until the usurpations, to put us under absolute despotism, and finally we cast it off and for the future of and declaration stuff. And we have been tolerant so much I don't think we can be anymore. It's an existential threat on not just your life, the future of your children, grandchildren. Something is happening. So now Mr. Optimist, the future is abundance. That's why we're living on technology out here and demonstrating that. But it's cracking. It's getting ready to go. And I don't see how it's not. But they yank something out of their butt. They always do, and drag it on. But then it's just still less freedom, less options, less wealth to the middle class of not just America, but the planet, including Japan. Here we freaking go.
Here we go.
So, that's my upbeat message.
Yeah. I'm afraid I'm not going to leave you with that hopeful spirit that I sometimes do. So, what are you going to do? Well, the world is what it is.
But we're going to come up with, solutions that we're advocating for, and I know James and I will, pimp whatever it is that we're going to have a solution, because there has to be a solution, or why are we doing this?
Yeah.
We're trying to prepare.
Yep.
Well, be prepared. Go to CorbettReport.com. Go to home school. No, wait a minute.
Whoa.
Open source education. Damn, same thing. Open source education.online. That is really starting to take off. Yeah. And we were happy to be able to talk to Professor James Corbett, CorbettReport.com. Thanks, James. Peace, brother.
I appreciate it. Take care, buddy.
Bye.